Now for the fun. I'm going to get a swivel knife and begin to cut this shape out. I have a few styles of swivel knife. I've got this one. It's a 3/8 inch hollow ground. That's kind of my go-to. I like it a lot. It's really good for cutting straights and also good for cutting circles. I have whatever this pointy one is, which is good for getting into these harder to reach areas. And then for detail work, which I don't know, maybe around the eyes, but otherwise probably won't need today, got this little 1/8 inch blade, which I very much like. I use a lot of that one, not a lot. But usually use that one for shallow cuts. And I'm going to be cutting pretty deep tonight. So, because it doesn't, we're going to be, unfortunately, we're going to be painting over all of this. So all the nice burnishing and whatnot that we're going to get from the tools isn't really going to apply here. So it's going to be more important to cut deep and to tool deep as well, because we're going to be relying heavily on antique gel, and we need deep recesses for that. Where's my straw at? Where is my straw? Well, now that's just kind of wild. I just had it. It's way over there. Don't remember that. Here we go. I don't know how well this is going to show. I have a feeling my hands are going to be in the way a lot. Can't help it. I'm set up for tooling, but I kind of forgot about the cutting. And the camera really should have been on the other side of my body for cutting. Because when I'm tooling, I tool by holding the tool in my left hand. But when I'm cutting, I cut with my right. So, sorry. Can't really help that. I'm going to give it a nice bold cut. And there's a bit of a question as to whether you should do the backgrounds first or the foregrounds first. Even though I cut there without thinking, I typically prefer to cut the foregrounds first. Reason being is that when I cut, I want to cut into the grooves and the cuts I've already made. So here that's going to be hard, right? Because the foreground overlaps it. So that was an unforced error. So here, let me do, I see the head as the most foreground because there's this line across the antlers. So let's get that. Stop shy when you ever have to make a sharp turn or like a T intersection. Stop shy, turn it around, cut it from the other direction. Otherwise you'll overcut and you'll end up with cuts where you don't want them to be. Not overcut, that actually is a thing that means something else. You just cut too deep, really, is what that means. Cut too, gosh, not deep, cut too far into your pattern. You'll cut where there's not lines. You'll cut where you don't want to. Geez, how hard was that to say? You see how I stopped short, but the actual blade, it was angled, right? The blade was angled and it wasn't out of the leather immediately, right? It's not like it was cutting this way and stopped. So that angle produces a cut that goes beyond where my pressure point was. My pressure point was right there. So if I were to bring this cut all the way to this edge, I would end up with an extra cut from that angle coming way out here somewhere. So instead, I stopped short, and you can see it. You can see where the blade comes out of the leather. You stop short right when that gets to that end point, turn it around, and cut from the opposite direction. Just a tiny little cut there. And we keep going. Obviously, the more sharp corners you have, the longer this is going to take. And that's just kind of how it is, it's not a process you want to rush ever. If you're rushing, you need to just stop, because rushing will lead to errors. And just be comfortable with it taking as long as it needs to take in order to produce a good result. If you don't, you will make... When you stop like this, it's really not ideal to stop early like this if you're in the middle of a cut. When you stop like that, start back a ways and then retrace your cut. So what I've done is I've turned it because I ran out of room for my wrist. Now that I've turned it, I'm going to start back about there and just retrace. You can feel it, you can kind of fall into the groove that you already cut. You can feel it, and then everything just lines up. Otherwise, you end up with edges that don't line up, you know? It's not great. It's not ideal. Sometimes also I'll stop, even though I haven't run out of space, I'll stop just to make sure I'm still cutting on my line. If I need to course correct, I'd like to do that sooner rather than late. And this is not a typical piece of work for me. I mean, artwork is, I tend to do more art than just tooling, you know. I don't just grab tools and do geometric shapes. Sometimes I do. Usually I have a specific piece of like a drawing or something that I'm tracing. But it's usually far more detailed than this. And I also will take usually a little more license with how deep I'm gonna cut and, you know, style, I guess. In this case, I'm just going for deep, bold lines everywhere. Because like I said, most of the nuance is gonna be lost on this particular piece. And so, deep, bold cuts so that I can put in deep, bold bevels. I'm gonna need those. Gonna need those. Oh, see, that's what I'm talking about. See how I went too far? Should have stopped short. Well, here's where I cut those lines earlier, and that's making it... I mean, I don't think anything's on camera because I'm gonna move the camera. Now it should be easier to see what I'm doing. So, when you make a cut and you come to the end of your cut, you usually want to turn your piece around and cut from the other direction. What you can do is what I just did, make lots of cuts in one direction, then when you turn it around, you can finish off all those cuts at the same time, like this. And in so doing, you save yourself a bit of time, which obviously time is important for its own sake, but it's also important because you're trying to beat the clock on your leather drying out. I cased this using a complete submerging into water, so it's going to last me a very long time before it dries out. But if you're using the more popular technique of just wiping it with a sponge periodically, you're going to have to either work a lot faster or wet it a lot more frequently. You can see my other video talking about how to deal with that and the challenges that can pose. as the leather dries out from too many applications. You can deal with it, which I talked about, but why? If you know that you're going to be working slowly, and I usually do work slowly, or if you know that you're going to be working on a very long project, which this one isn't, I don't think. Not in terms of tooling. I think this is going to go actually quite quickly. But if you know that you're in for a long night, then why not save yourself that trouble and just get it all nice and wet. See that other video if you don't know what I'm talking about, because I don't mean simply submerge it and get to work. That's not what I'm saying. Not at all. Okay, that's pretty good. Now I can finally do this moon shape. And circles are deceptively difficult. If you get off that line, it shows. So I'm going to take my time. I may still mess up. They're very difficult. I'm going to take my time. Actually, I'm going to strop my blade again too, just so I have it as sharp as I possibly can. Don't want any dragging, anything. Take no chances. Circles are, if they're perfect, they look great. And if there's just even a little bit that's not quite right, they just fall apart. So they take some practice, actually. They take a fair amount of practice. Okay, here we go. And I don't underestimate them. I always respect the circles. And what I'm actually watching, where my eye is not the back of my blade. My eye is actually right there at the front of the blade where it just touches the leather, because that's the beginning of my cut. Everything is going to follow right there, right that beginning of the cut. So I'm making sure that this part of my cut stays on line. If it starts to go off at all, I need to stop and evaluate. If you catch it right at the beginning of the cut where it's shallow and thin, then you can correct it, and you'll never really notice it, because the thickness of the cut overrides any mistake you started to make. So if you catch it really, really early, you're fine. It's super easy to miss, or rather it's super hard to do correctly. Take your pick. And I am guiding the knife with my thumb. I'm pressuring it with my index finger, and by guiding I mean I'm steering it. And everything else is in my shoulder. I'm pulling it this way, keeping my wrist steady. None of this stuff. That's how you mess up. Always moving the piece, never moving my wrist. And taking my time. It's the most important thing. Take your time. There's no rush. Nothing else in the world exists except this cut. It's starting to fight me. I'm just going to flip this blade around. Probably need to strop it again on that side. Starting to go off a little there. Grab it, fix it, continue on. There. Stop shy, because you see that cut? I don't want that to cut into my, especially as the foreground. Turn it around, finish it on the back side, and that's it. Now those eyes. Well, let me get this little piece right here. I don't feel comfortable cutting those eyes with this blade. I just don't think that I can get the maneuverability that I need in there. I may be able to get it with my angled blade. Yeah, that can get in there. Just realized I'm going to need some very tiny bevels for those eyes. You know, they're also a little wonky. the bottom of this eye doesn't match the bottom of this eye. I want that to come down to there. The tops line up, that's fine. The shape is slightly different, but not really a problem. So I think the problem with the eye is just to draw this line up. This one also looks more evil than it should. I may be able to just wing that. Bring this out. Very carefully. Eyes are hard. I'm gonna try that. I don't know, man. We'll see. Same thing as before, except with a much more severe aggressive angle. The other one didn't come out so quickly, right? It means that we're going to have a more aggressive cut in a much smaller space. So we'll have more maneuverability for turning, but we also have to control our depth a little bit more carefully, our pressure. Little more. That'll do. Then come over here. I'm gonna come in just a little bit because this eye ends right above this curve. This eye ends just shy of it, so I'm gonna bring it in just a hair and line it up with that curve. Another way to look at it is that there's a line from this antler and this line from this antler. Actually, probably wants to be more like here, right? But I'm gonna put it there. Yeah, just there. And I'm gonna very carefully bring this cut up and around. Make sure to keep the blade perfectly straight up and down. We are not interested in undercuts or overcuts on this one. That's if you cut at an angle, that's an undercut. I have no need for an undercut on this project. Not that I can think of. If you would use an undercut here, tell me how. Tell me how you would apply that. Well, I don't like the eyes. Does anyone ever like their eyes when they do these kinds of work? Occasionally you nail it, but that does not look nailed to me. That looks pretty bad. Shoot, how am I going to improve it? Well, I can cut it a little, this one a little larger, a little higher up here, and recut down here. The reason I think I can get away with that is because all of this is going to get beveled down to look, well, it'll probably be black by the time I'm done antiquing it. So I think I can get away with murder there. Let's find out, because I'm about to murder this thing. This is actually so close that I may actually end up cutting that leather out, which would be not what I'm after. It's not too bad. It's not great. It's not too bad. And then up here, I think it's a little better. It's still kind of unfortunate, but I think by the time it's done being tooled, it won't matter.